Let's start with the headline first. More than half of the world's population will be classed as obese or overweight by 2035 if action is not taken, the World Obesity Federation warns. The Dutch government is to put restrictions on the country's most advanced microchip technology exports to protect national security, following a similar move by the US. German's top court has partially overturned the sentencing of a German woman involving in the death of a 5-year-old Yazidi girl. More than 4 billion people will be affected, with rates rising fastest among children, its report says. Lower middle-income countries in Africa and Asia are expected to see the greatest rises. The report predicts the cost of obesity will amount to more than $4 trillion annually by 2035. The president of the Federation, Professor Louis Baur, described the report's finding as a clear warning to countries to act now or risk repercussions in the future. The report in particular highlights the rising rates of obesity among children and teenagers, with rates expected to double from 2020 levels among both boys and girls. Professor Baur said the trend was particularly worrying, adding that governments and policymakers around the world need to do all they can to avoid passing health, social, and economic costs on to the young generation by accessing the systems and root factors that contribute to obesity. The effects of obesity's prevalence on lower-income countries is also highlighted in the report. 9 of the 10 countries with the greatest expected increases in obesity globally are low or lower middle-income states in Africa and Asia. Reasons include trends in dietary preference towards more highly processed foods, greater levels of sedentary behavior, weaker policies to control food supply and marketing, and less well-resourced healthcare services to assist in weight management and health education. Lower-income countries are often the least able to respond to obesity and its consequences. The findings estimate that rises in obesity rates around the world will have a significant impact on the global economy, equating to 3% of global gross domestic product. The report emphasizes that its acknowledgement of the economic impact of obesity is in no way a reflection of blame on people living with obesity. The data published in the report will be presented to the UN on Monday. Obese is a medical term used to describe a person with a high excess of body fat. The report uses body mass index (BMI) to make its assessments. BMI is calculated by dividing an adult's weight by the square of their height. It will include products by chip equipment maker ASML, a key firm in the global microchip supply chain. In response, China has launched a formal complaint against the move. It said it hoped the Netherlands would not follow the abuse of export control measures by certain countries. China has frequently called the US a tech hegemony in response to export controls imposed by Washington. Semiconductors, which power everything from mobile phones to military hardware, are at the center of a bitter dispute between the US and China. A spokeswoman for the Chinese Foreign Ministry, Mao Ning, said the Dutch move aimed to deprive China of its right to develop. Dexter Roberts, a senior fellow at the Washington-based Atlantic Council think tank, told the reporters that the decision by the Netherlands was a real step forward, a real victory for the US, and also very bad news for China. US-China relations are already in a pretty bad place. This clearly will make things even worse. The measures will affect very specific technologies in the semiconductor production cycle. The Dutch Trade Minister, Lise Schroener said the Netherlands consider it necessary on national and international security grounds that this technology is brought under control as soon as possible, she said in a letter to lawmakers on Wednesday. Ms. Schroener added the Dutch government had considered the technological developments and geopolitical context, without naming China or ASML. Under the new rules, companies would have to apply for license to export technology including the most advanced deep ultraviolet (DUV) immersion lithography and deposition. ASML said in a statement that it expects that the restrictions to apply to its most advanced immersion DUV systems, deep ultraviolet systems. The company added that based on today's announcement, our expectation of the Dutch government's licensing policy and the current market situation, we do not expect these measures to have a material effect on our financial outlook. Lithography machines use lasers to print minuscule patterns on silicon as part of the manufacturing process of microchips. Since 2019, the Dutch government has stopped ASML from selling its most advanced lithography machines to China. In October, Washington announced that it would require license for companies exporting chips to China using US tools or software, no matter where they are made in the world. The US has been pushing the Netherlands and Japan to adopt similar restrictions. Meanwhile, South Korea's Trade Ministry raised concerns over the US policy on semiconductors earlier this week. The South Korean government will make it clear that the condition of the CHIPS Act could deepen business uncertainties, violate companies' management and technology rights, as well as make the United States less attractive as an investment option, the ministry said. South Korea is home to major microprocessor manufacturers, including the world's biggest memory chip maker Samsung.
الأربع سنوات اللي فاتت إنه بس بديت إنه أوصل رسالتي للعالم وكنت
Jennifer Winis, who was a member of the Islamic State group, was jailed for 10 years in 2021 for her role in the girl's death. The country's public prosecutor had argued this sentence was too lenient. Winis and her husband, an IS fighter, had bought the girl and her mother as slaves. In August 2015, the girl died after being chained up in the scorching sun. Winis was judged to have committed a crime against humanity, having stood by when her husband left the girl to die of thirst. She denied the charge. A Munich court found her guilty of being an accessory to murder, but ruled that her case was a less severe one. Germany's Federal Court of Justice disagreed that her crime had been less severe than the original sentence. 9 years of death of a child resulting from slavery plus 2.5 years for membership of a terror group, to be served over 10 years, will now be reviewed. Her husband, Iraqi jihadist Taha al-Zumaili, is serving a life sentence. This case, for a crime which took place in the northern Iraqi city of Fallujah, was one of the first instances of an IS offense against the Yazidi community going to trial. The Yazidi, a Qudris group from northern Iraq, were a particular target of IS brutality. In 2014, IS fighters stormed into the ancestral heartland of Yazidi people in northern Iraq, seizing thousands of women and children as slaves. Winis allegedly served in an IS anti-vice squad which enforced strict Islamic rules in Mosul and Fallujah. She stood a trial in Germany because of the legal principle of universal jurisdiction, which allows prosecutions for alleged war crimes, including genocide, which took place in other countries. London-based human rights lawyer Amal Clooney was part of the legal team representing the girl's mother.